Your feelings are true. Your feelings are you. And that's what makes them a compass on your passage, where true north is your destiny. You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deep reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Lee Bowers, master healer and academic researcher. And this is another episode diving into the science and spirit of happy, a logical path to soul. Get it, y'all! Welcome back. Oh man, I'm so excited today. This is actually the personal power that I'm discussing today in the season on how to not be like your parents, which essentially just means how to be the person that you want to be, regardless of what kind of shape you've been created from your experiences, from outside pressures, from the patterning and the programming that you've inherited through generations. And this personal power, everybody needs the same personal powers to get to their goals, whether they had, great parents who just, fell short in a few ways. That's like personal to the person because, they're a different kind of person who needed a different kind of leadership, or they had, really harmful parents who did a lot of things wrong. And as we go through the season, I'm going to illustrate how common that is just because of the lack of information, because of like cultural sort of fads and parenting styles that were taught to us. A lot of people's parents did actually do some pretty good damage to their feelings of worthiness and our abilities to be our real selves. Okay, so how to not be like our parents is really how to be like ourselves. And this personal power is my favorite to discuss. And I feel like it's because it is maybe the most empowering, the most personally empowering personal power of them all. Are you excited? I'm excited. So we're diving into now the HeartSet. Okay, so I was talking about how personal development is largely missing a huge body of steps, of content, of necessary requirements to make the changes that people want to make. So the personal development strategies are usually, they start in the mind, choose, and then they jump to the do, which is in the body. And I was saying that there's a lot of steps in between, which I'm explaining in this season and in the book, to getting to do. And I was also talking about how, my work is really unique in not just that I have a lot of steps that are crucial to getting to your goals that aren't being discussed, that aren't common practice or knowledge that's being passed on, but also because of the holistic nature of my method, the holistic nature of the sustainable dreams theory, the theory that I base all of my work on. And the holisticness of it, if that's a word, holisticness,
If not, I just made it up. The holistic aspect of my work actually makes goals really easy because each of the personal powers piggybacks on another personal power and makes it exponentially more powerful. So you have just more energy to put towards your goals. So the holistic nature of the strategy is based in going through each of the layers. Okay, so I call them districts. I call them sets because the districts are mind, heart, soul, body, or energy, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. And the sets are kind of the lenses to each. So it's the shape that each has been kind of constructed, and how it's programmed to respond, is programmed to process what's happening and react. So it's mindset, heart set, soul set, body set. So now we're in the heart layer, okay? And if you're familiar with my work, you may be familiar with how I speak about the holistic nature of reality and the proof. I mean, there's proof everywhere. It's reality. It's the nature of reality, that there is a finite and an infinite. There is a singular and a conglomerate. There is kind of a linear and an open. And I'm even drawing blanks on trying to explain the right brain, which is the open side, which is the expansive side, which is the universal and the divine, because it doesn't really have language, right? It doesn't lend itself very readily to that linear dialogue, that linear way of seeing things and expressing them that the left brain does. The easiest way that I explain this for, more linear rational brains is the linear side is physics, and the non-linear side, the open side, is quantum physics, right? And if you know anything about quantum physics, you'll know that it boggles the mind. It's incredibly hard to explain. It's incredibly hard to study. The same with epigenetics. Genetics would be the linear code, and then epigenetics is like everything coming into play with one another. And I know with epigenetics, they've essentially had to throw out almost like all of their work up into a certain point because they were just on the wrong path. It's just so difficult to pin down. And I don't know if science ever will pin it down, because I think that it requires a completely different approach. And this sounds really defeating. We have this whole half of reality, and it's a proof that it's a whole half of reality because we have it's half of our brains is in my theory. The way that I illustrate it is that we have a half of our brain that's geared to process this side of reality. So it's a whole half of reality. It's very hard to understand or to put into words anyways. However, we're totally capable of understanding it completely. We're totally capable of harnessing it completely. We're totally capable of walking in that power totally, because we have a whole brain that can respond to it. Okay? So we're dropping into that side now, which makes things a little bit less simplistic to discuss. However, this strategy that I'm going to use is going to show you how you can actually harness this power for yourself. So when I say that your dream is your destiny, if you're familiar with my work, you know that I say that your dream is your destiny. This isn't just lip service, okay? This isn't just a catchy line that, gets your attention and sort of embodies what I do, getting you to big goals or whatever easily. This is really true, okay? It's true. Your dream, the thing that you dream of, the thing that you really, really want, the thing that you crave, you might even think it's a crazy thing that you crave, is truly your destiny. This is really hard for the linear rational mind that a lot of us are raised to use. It's cultural, it's It's just the way that we approach the world right now. And it was even more so in the past. So when we were children, this was even more of a focus then. It's really difficult to just accept that this wonderful thing that you want is actually like what you're meant for. But how else would you know what your purpose is? Okay, if you're creating human beings, how else would you know what your purpose is if then giving you a drive towards it? And why would every parent, even the most terrible parents, statistically speaking, when we give parents questionnaires on what they want for their children, they almost ubiquitously respond that they just want their kids to be happy. Okay, so even the parents who respond that they want them to be able to, have financial stability or, have a happy marriage or any of these things, those things would still, if you press the parent further, they would still be their idea of what's required to be happy. So this is essentially a really good illustration at like what we're here to do and why, or at least what is going to show us the way towards our human purpose. The pursuit of happiness is the founding right and inspiration to the U.S. Constitution. Now, why would the pursuit of happiness be the founding right and inspiration to the U.S. Constitution, which is the document that is responsible for essentially founding the free world, human rights, and justice as we know it? And, current politics aside, Americans are very proud of their country because they have a historical right to be. The pursuit of happiness is so foundational to justice, to rights, to the way that we view humans' purpose, because it really is. We all understand that there's something purposeful, there's something grounded and divine about carving our personal ways towards fulfillment. We all know. This was like essentially, I'm not going to say it's a global revolution, but it kind of is, because that revolution, that, human rights and honoring the pursuit of happiness above all else, is still rippling through our world, and people are still starting to fight for it. Even the people that didn't get on board hundreds of years ago when this was, beginning in the West, are getting on board now. So I don't want to get into global politics or whatever, but I'm just saying that the ripple hasn't even stopped yet, because this was such a powerful force, and it's just something that so many people align with, because we all know it's what we're here to do. And barring some very few, not even few, I would say a couple, maybe a few anomalies out there, even governments who don't govern according to liberal rights are still doing so because they think that the pursuit of happiness for their country, for their people, is a different way, is going to be achieved by a different way. So happiness and fulfillment, this isn't a side note. This is not something that is, wishful thinking that you could maybe think about some other day. This is a driving force towards what we're here to do. So it's only natural then to accept that what makes you happy is a really clear indication of what is also righteous for you. It's what you're made for. And also, the really great thing is that the universe gets behind you. When you are aligned with your human purpose, when you are aligned with your individual drive, your individual gifts for the world, your individual self, being standing in expression of life, the whole universe gets on your side. So dream becomes your destiny, which then seems, if I'm saying dream is your destiny, it's a given, right? Well, yes, no. Yes, no. It would be a given if you were allowed to follow on your path unobstructed. However, the other side of life, the other side of the brain, the other side of reality makes things really interesting because we have free will, as does everybody else. So the trouble that we really get into when we're trying to create these big goals, our dream, right? Live our purpose, is that the barometer for that, the barometer for happiness, the barometer for joy is entirely inside us. It's not inside anybody else. And it requires a very highly emotionally intelligent person to understand that everyone has the right to feel however they want to feel. So if it takes an incredibly emotionally intelligent person to recognize that everybody has the right to feel however they want to feel, the level of emotional intelligence it requires of a parent to look at a child who's a dependent and see that them with that same respect, that human rights respect, that they have the right to feel however they want to feel and how they feel is right and is driving them to a righteous end personally. Yeah, it's difficult. And your parents will either teach you to trust it or to suppress it and even distrust it, think that it's not righteous. Okay? So the third personal power is fierceness. And I'm not talking about Beyonce on a catwalk fierceness. That could be a characterization of the next personal power that I'm going to talk about in HeartSet. But this is not the kind of fierceness that I'm discussing. Okay? So we're talking about how feelings are the barometer for where you need to go. Like your joy, your happiness, what makes you feel good is a compass on your path where true north is your destiny, which is your dream life. When parents teach you to suppress this, to distrust this, to think that your feelings are unrighteous, where do we end up? The compass is where? Is directed towards what? That's how destiny becomes nothing but a dream, right? Instead of your dream becoming your destiny. And it's really easy to understand how this happens. I was saying, like, this is really, really common, especially this one. This is why it's my favorite personal power to discuss, because I feel like it can be the most like explosively empowering one because it's so common for us to be taught in childhood to suppress and distrust our feelings. How many parents do you know that show love to their kids regardless of how they feel, how they behave, or how they respond? And like referring to their kids as if they're the authority on how they feel. Trusting that they know how they feel and how they feel is righteous. Like treating their feelings as true and good. Like hearing, considering, and empathizing with their kids, even in a trying situation. Like how many parents do you know or have you heard of that like even like full on bully their kids? Like, you know, those aren't even real tears. You're acting like a baby, you know, mocking, laughing, embarrassing them. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. That's one I heard. Hopefully that's like super old school and that you're not seeing a lot of that. But what about like gaslighting? Well, you know, you're upset about how this person responded. Well, why did you do that to them then? Or, oh, so-and-so did something bad to you? Well, you must have done something to deserve it because they're not like a meanie kid or whatever. Well, if you didn't do this, then I wouldn't have responded this way to you. Blaming the kid for the parent's emotional dysregulation. or parents that even undermined. You're being dramatic. It wasn't that bad. There's no reason to be so upset. Or, simply dismiss. This is one that my husband kept doing over and over again. And I was like, excuse me, saying, you're okay. It's okay. Stop crying. Stop arguing. Or the worst, no response at all. And, I'm not talking about going through the motions. I'm not talking about reverberating the right line. Okay. I often use, you're okay to, I have a toddler, I have a 2-year-old. I often tell him you're okay when he's upset and I've got him. You're okay now, I've got you. And I often use it's okay when I know what he wants and he's upset about it and I'm on it, I'm getting it. I'd be like, it's okay, I got it. I got you, right? So I'm not talking about the lines. And this is something that is really focused on in the parental sort of community now. We're becoming aware of the mistakes of the past, which, really we should be really, really taking in if we're parents, because we're passing this stuff on, right? And this was very common. It's very common. And we're being given these scripts. And I remember seeing this woman in a pool change room, and her kid was just crying and crying and crying and crying. And she's trying to get him, dressed, undressed, whatever. They're leaving the pool. The pool is closing for cleaning, whatever. And he's crying and crying and crying. And she's saying over and over and over again, I understand. She's being totally dismissive, totally dismissive. But she's saying the words, right? I understand. Oh yeah, I understand you're upset. But not empathizing whatsoever. This is not a script. And the scripts are what we're being taught now instead of just outright dismissing. We're being taught we need to just check things off a box and then we're going to be empathetic parents. And that isn't about the script. And, maybe that woman was just over it at that day. I'm not saying that woman is definitely just a totally dismissive parent. It's, parenting is hard, but that in that moment, she was definitely being dismissive while saying that she wasn't being dismissive. And this gets into the area that I think is actually the worst, is when it's not clear that there's been a problem. And when people your parents have pretended that they did a good job, all the while not doing a good job underneath the surface. And this is where trusting that big expansive area that's not linear, is so important, because your feelings will tell you. Your feelings will tell you if somebody's dismissing you. Okay, your linear rational mind can totally be duped by the words. Yeah, but I was actually giving you words of affirmation. I told you I understood how you were feeling. Your feelings will tell you whether that's true or not. So it's just such an important personal power to really get the meaning behind the words. Is it curious or is it dismissive? Right? So now we're using our personal powers of clarity and connection. And I really need to get through this because I could just go on all day. I wrote a book that outlines all of these steps. These are giant, huge concepts. I usually teach these steps in my membership over a year. Okay, so there's a lot to this, and this is my favorite one, and there's a lot to this one, but I'm gonna have to go through it. So I implore you to get the book at the very least. It's priced super reasonably to get it in as many hands as possible. And the membership is also priced super reasonably to get it in as many hearts as possible, because this stuff is really, really, really important. So I really implore you to do that. I'm also going to do a season on parenting. But for now, I just want you to understand that being shut down shuts you down. Okay. And it's really hard to empathize with a kid. Okay. So from our vantage point, from the parent's vantage point, from an adult vantage point, it's really hard to understand what the F this kid is crying about, right? Their brains aren't developed. So your brain wasn't fully developed, as well as everything else that goes with it. It doesn't make their feelings any less true. It doesn't, just because we don't understand as adults what the hell the problem is, it doesn't mean that there's not a problem. And when we dismiss them as there not being a problem, we're teaching the kid that they don't feel things clearly. They're not feeling clearly. What you feel isn't true. Yeah, no, what you feel is not important. I don't actually care how you feel, and you shouldn't trust how you feel, and you're going to have to deal with how you feel in some way that isn't actually dealing with how you feel. This is the messaging and from an authority figure in a developmental stage. This is super messed up. Why is your dream not your automatic destiny? This is why. You don't trust yourself anymore. Okay? You don't follow your feelings. You don't think they're true. You might be sitting here even questioning, like, yeah, right, my dream is my destiny. It is. Were you annoying, crying at the pool, in the locker room for apparently no reason after you'd actually had a really nice time while your parents struggled to get your dry clothes on your wet little body and you're all sticky and you're bawling your eyes out and you're not cooperating after they just got you ready and they took you to the pool and they chaperoned you around the whole time so that you could have a nice activity. And this is the end of the activity, you just being in a state. Was that annoying? Yes, it was. It was annoying. You were very annoying in that moment. Does that mean that your little heart was breaking any less? Does that mean that you were any less distraught? Does that make your feelings any less true? Does that make the hard time that you were having any easier? No. And dismissing your heartbreak over something that I don't understand is still dismissing your heartbreak. This is where things go wrong, okay? The barometer for true north gets smashed or buried. Fierceness, the fierceness that I'm talking about, is feeling your feelings fully. This is authenticity. It's authenticity. It's where vulnerability starts. Okay? And again, it sounds simple, but like I've illustrated that it's not. And I've written signs of shutdown in the chapter because you actually can't tell. Once you're shut down, you can't tell that you're shut down because the feelings aren't bubbling to the surface anymore. So this is not simple, okay? This is not straightforward. There's been like a TikTok revolution on people just feeling their feelings because feelings, they're not just the barometer too of like where you're supposed to go, okay? On a step-by-step basis, feelings are the barometer for how right the track you're on is. You can use them to tell you where to go at every single point. Feelings are true. Your feelings are you. And it's so common, even, in the personal and professional development sphere to just reduce feelings like this. It just keeps going on and on and on from being a child and being in that powerless state to then having, mentors in leadership fields saying that, the way that you're feeling is just, it's transient. This is like common in the spiritual space too, because of, I think, Buddhism. And anyways, I won't dive into that, but that's got a place, okay? Dismissing feelings has a very specific places, and I will talk about that in the book because I don't have time here. But for now, I've heard people just so many times saying like how you feel isn't true, how you feel is just transient, it's just passing through whatever. And when you're using this for growth, for healing, for development, this equates white knuckling through. I talked about like white knuckling your way through. And it isn't sustainable. It leads to burnout. This isn't healing. This isn't growth. Okay, this is forcing your way through regardless of your injuries. Okay, I'll use the analogy of a bike later, So if you tune in, you will understand this fully. But this is like trying to ride a bike when you're injured and the bike is broken. Like, you can do it, but the likelihood that you cause further injury, the likelihood that it's going to be like exponentially more difficult for you than somebody with a kitted out, like gorgeous, dream bike and all of the spare parts, who is in optimal health, who's trained for this, etc. Like, I mean, you can compete against these people. You can compete against life, against the trail, against the road, by getting on a broken ass bike and, having all these injuries and just like pushing through it if you want. But if you want to actually get to the bottom of what's going on, you need to trust your feelings, because regardless of whether the situation reflects the feelings that you're having about it, even in that situation where you're triggered, even in that situation where you overreact, even when the emotions don't actually fit the scenario, they're still messengers. They're messengers from the place within us that's very hard to understand, and they come through clear. And if we have clarity and if we have connection, we can assess this stuff. We can assess the feeling coming up and ask ourselves questions. What do I feel? This is Brené Brown's like almost her whole work. What do I feel? Where is it coming from? Why? You think feelings come from nowhere? God, these mentors talking about like how you can't let your feelings get in the way, who are then like unhappy, have hundreds of millions of dollars, and sit around complaining about everybody else. You think your feelings come from nowhere? Or you think there's a little kid inside who's saying, I don't care if you don't understand. I'm still really upset that we're leaving the pool. And I would like a little support, maybe. Or I would at least like the right to just process this the way that I'm going to process this. I would like the right to cry. I would like the right to be upset. I'll be okay in a little while. But right now, this is how I feel. This is my truth. This is true to me. And it's right. If you can do that, man, you're golden, okay? Or you're on the way to golden. Next episode, I'm going to tell you how this turns into excellent leadership, belonging, phenomenal relationships, as well as creating the dream life that you really want easily. I'll see you next time, y'all. Mwah.